Dubey sir, now you can introduce Howard sir.
Okay. Good morning, friends. Nice to be back this Sunday morning, late evening in California. Our speaker this morning is Mr. Howard Ward from Ohio, California, USA. And he's going to speak to us on order and the silent mind. First of all, I want to extend a very warm to Mr. Howard Ward, and also want to thank him on behalf of the Shripati Study Circle Indore, India, for agreeing to our request and being with us today for this talk. For those of us who don't know Mr. Howard Ward, I'll briefly introduce him to the participants. Mr. Ward was first introduced to Krishnaji's dialogue in the fall of 1986 at the first Shripati Foundation of America Dialogue Weekend after Krishnamurti's demise. Since that time, he has been regularly attending and facilitating Krishnamurti dialogues in Ohio as well as in Los Angeles area. He also attended a number of the David Bohm seminars on dialogue and the nature of thought given by Dr. David Bohm at the Oak Grove School in Ohio in the late 80s and early 90s. He is currently working at the KFA Library Bookstore and coordinating the weekly dialogues for the Krishnamurti Foundation of America. With this brief introduction, I want to welcome Howard once again and want to thank him for being with us. The format, Howard, is that you can take about 45 minutes to an hour so that we have about 20-25 minutes for people to ask questions. So please unmute yourself and you can begin now.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you to Harshad for suggesting me. I don't know that I'll take that long or something. I did watch some of your videos, and you have a wonderful group, and and have some wonderful speakers before. So I'm privileged to be in that group. As my bio indicated, I never did get to see Krishnamurti personally, but I lived fortunately close to Ojai so that I could go up there frequently and study the teachings and attend the local dialogues early on. Actually, I wanted to mention at that first dialogue in 1986 at the Krishnamurti Foundation, they had a choice of 5 topics to choose from, and the topic I actually chose was order. And when we first went into the dialogue, the group immediately sort of said, well, we can't talk about order because we don't know what it is. But maybe if we talk about disorder, we can see what that is, and then maybe we'll discover order. Well, I'm actually going to talk about order. But I want to mention I'm going to use words and language like everyone does, but I'm sure all of you know the word is not the thing. So I'm going to point to some things, and my description that's all it will be, is a description of what I see. And it's always open to question. So what is order? So I'm going to be blunt and say, order is there when the self is not. When this fictional self is seen to be fictional, along with all of the beliefs and opinions and assumptions that are associated with this imaginary idea of a self, when that's seen to be false, the mind goes quiet and stops chattering about a self-image. And in that silence, there's no there's no observer that's critiquing or resisting life. There's simply the contact with life and action. There's no evaluator of life whenever the self is absent. So order is there when the mind is silent. So the nature of this self-image is resistance. It's a collection of resistance to what is, but it's all conceptual imagery. And when that's seen to have no substance to it, is no significance to it, then the mind loses interest in chattering about a fictitious self. And see, this might be real short. We can open up for questions soon or something, but I want to suggest that the greatest hindrance to dissolving the self is all of the ideas about what we think we know. Even when you listen to Krishnamurti, if you pick up ideas that Krishnamurti said about you're supposed to stay with it, you're supposed to, look choicelessly, all of these ideas that we get from Krishnamurti, they become an obstacle to choiceless awareness. As long as the mind thinks it knows, the possibility of insight is highly unlikely to occur. The looking and observing of oneself has to be from a place of not knowing, or else this self-imagery will persist. And that's actually about all well, let me clarify again. Order is a state where there's no resistance to life, where there's simply a complete openness to what is, and observing what is, and action comes from that. There's no, critique of what is. There's simply observation, which reveals what is, and then there's action. So that's what order was meant by Krishnamurti. And the silent mind it's not devoid of thought. What it's devoid of is the self-image. The mind can still communicate, talk, suggest things, do things from a place of silence. What the silent mind means is there's no longer the self-imagery, being taken for something of truth. So the mind is no longer separating itself from what is. So that's my suggestion. And I am open to questions or dialogue, whichever you prefer.
Thank you, Howard. I think you have very rightly and very briefly put the whole Krishnamurti's vision of order. I think one has to begin from where one is, I am what myself is. I can't separate self from what I am. It's very difficult to do that, and no effort can reach me anywhere. But when I realize that self is the one which is creating problems for me in my relationship, in my day-to-day living, then the mind becomes quiet. And as you have rightly said, the state of not knowing, I think that is the key to seeing things as they are. So very rightly said. Thank you very much. I think there'll be lots of comments. So I invite people to yes, Harshad Bhai, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Howard. In a very short, you have said everything very, very clearly that the problem is not thinking, but from the thinking, when this thinker, the sense of I or me comes, then there is a duality between thinker and thought, and all our problems of psychological nature is because of this duality between thinker, that means me, and thinking. So this one can really experiment with this when a person is really uh, very, very curious and attentive, and initially maybe alone in a very quiet place, and go give the attention right to the thinking. And but again, that requires a kind of a freedom to watch the beginning of a thought. But when there is a curiosity, there is an energy, and it happens that the thinking also stops. And at that time, there is, it seems to me that there is a different state, which what Krishnaji would call awareness. And when that awareness comes, then thinking can be seen as it is without the thinker. So our problems in daily life is not thinking. Thinking is necessary, but lack of awareness. That means when somebody says something and that is very um, unpleasant, the reactions begin to come. And when there is this ongoing awareness, can see the reaction very quickly, and one doesn't react then. One just watching. All we need in our life, daily life, is just observing what is without what should be, or without the thinker. And when this fictitious self is not there, then there is a real freshness, real beauty in nature. And Krishnaji would even say that when the self is not, there is a love which is not attachment. So love, beauty, order, um, they are all almost same. They are different words, but the beauty is when this self is not interfering in looking at a tree or a human being, and looking very fresh, very silent mind, no observer. So uh, this is possible for human beings. If human beings are very, very passionate and not uh, wanting some result out of this, but want to observe the self without any motive. And in that, that is what happened to me when first I read Krishnamurti book in 1972 or 73. And my mind became very silent when I really wanted to watch the beginning of a thought. And then I understood that, yes, this is possible for human beings. It doesn't mean that one doesn't is free from the ego. Ego may be there, thinking may be there, but there is this a different dimension called awareness, which is not thinking and feeling, but something coming out from the plane of thinking and feeling and observing thinking very, very clearly. So, okay, I have said enough thing right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Howard, would you like to comment on it, or should I go to the next question now?
Yeah, just something short or something. I think a couple of points that Harshad made were like this curiosity needs to be, like just the interest to see what's actually there. just like Krishnamurti often would say, sometimes he would say, can I look? And then he would correct himself and say, can there be an observation? You know, it's not, can I look? If there's the notion that I'm looking, it's going to be interpreting rather than observing. You know, so that's one of the important distinctions. It has to be completely apart from the notion of me looking. It has to be an interest to see, to be in touch with what is, with the truth. If it's got a me looking in it, it's going to stay in the same loop of thought. The other thing about what was mentioned was this being aware of this movement of thought. You know, in the David Bohm seminars that I attended, you know, he addressed what he called proprioception of thought. And when I was in these seminars with him, you know, he was revealing, you know, like so much incoherence in thought that it became just a necessity, an automatic necessity to just be aware of this movement of thought. There's no effort involved. There's just a seeing of the necessity of the thoughts coming up. And so whenever we're in relationship, there's this watching of the thoughts when they come up. And so there's no longer taking them seriously, you know, like you see it and when it comes up and there's no reaction, there's no emotional reaction to it. So I'm suggesting that this curiosity to observe thought in Krishnamurti also suggested this too. And he said, okay, we all know what awareness is, but are we aware of the reactions? Are we aware of the thoughts? So he said, bring that thought, movement of thought into the awareness as well. So, and that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Dinesh, please go ahead.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes, sir.
My voice is clear?
Yeah, clear.
Sir, there are 2 points today. One is order and there is silent mind. We say order is when self is not. Order is when one is free from the past. So to get that order, first one has to purify the mind, isn't it? Of all the conflicts and all your jealousy and fear and what Krishnamurti says. This is point number 1. Otherwise, just by seeing how the order can come, people say that just by seeing the order can come. But unless there is wisdom, unless there is an understanding of the full structure, and one works on that and one becomes free of that, then only I think the order can be maintained, because order has to be maintained in future or future. If we don't talk of future, from moment to moment. So one has to be free from all the past, and for that purification of mind is a must. What you have to say? This is question number 1. Now there is another point, which is silent mind. This silent mind, what do you think? Is it an absence of noise, or the mind which sees both polarities, quietness as well as noise? And how, if it is so, then how that mind will function, silent mind will function to make the order? Is intelligence necessary to operate from that mind? What do you have to say?
What was the last thing about, you said, the last thing you said about the silent mind?
Silent mind, okay, there is a one state, say state of being or whatever we say, or that quality of mind which is silent. Now it has to operate through your day-to-day life, in day-to-day life. So can it work unless the intelligence works through it? That is the question.
Okay. The first part of the freeing the mind, you know, this is what Krishnamurti did, and what I suggest is quite a wonderful suggestion. First, he would invite people to start observing this thought, you know, like see see its nature, see what it's saying, really get intimate, like he would say, like a precious jewel, see the whole nature of these thoughts. And sometimes he would even say, try writing them down, write down every thought. But then he would say, that's just to get yourself familiar with observing this movement of thought. And then he would ask you, can we see the nature of the whole movement, the entire movement of thought, and see that every single thought has the same limited nature? It's just abstract imagery. So you can see that the essence, the nature of all thought, unconscious or conscious, it's all just abstract projected images. And if they really see this, you see that whatever thought says is never what it is. You see the entire thing. So the mind is freed from taking the thought seriously. It just observed and looks, observed, looks. So that cleans up that makes it clear that nothing that thought says is ever what is. But I would suggest in my own life experience that once that's seen, there's like a cleansing process. The system gets cleaned out of all the old residue. It'll come up and just drop away. So it kind of cleanses the whole system of collected imagery. So that's one. So the mind is then no longer, like interested in, like attending to thought unless it's important, unless it has something to do with our daily functions or something. So it's the interest is no longer given to thought. The interest is on what is, what's happening. Thought becomes unimportant, and paying attention to what's actually happening becomes the central interest. So, but as I suggested before, the silent mind it can use words whenever they're necessary, because it no longer takes the words as the thing. There's no longer the risk of being confused by words. You're just using them as pointers, as a tool to figure something out. It's thought is actually an incredibly useful tool to figure out things, to imagine things, to figure out how you can make something work or something. It's a tremendous tool, but it's being used by a mind that's quiet now, that's observant. It's not occupied with a self. So that's what I was suggesting. I'm suggesting that words are not a problem. It's this investment in, it's giving this wrong significance to thought and this idea of a me, which is just a fiction. So whenever the words are no longer confused for truth, they cease to be a problem.
So what about the function in the day-to-day life of that silent mind? How it will work in day-to-day life?
Well, we still live in a civilization or a structure that's been created by this confusion in thought. And so I would say what one does is one no longer operates from this place of a self-center, but is observing holistically and thinking holistically, just observing what's there. And the action is, like considering, like everyone around us.
Totality.
Yeah, totality, yeah. It's no longer self-centered. It's now the interest is holistic. What action will be, harmonious with the whole.
Thank you, Howard. I think, Dinesh,
Thank you.
I just want to add that there is no state of mind or being needed to understand these teachings. There is no place of becoming something and then you understand what Krishna is talking about. I think, and nobody can tell you exactly what a silent mind is, because that will only be a statement. It can't solve our issues, our problems. So I'd suggest that best thing is take any disorder in our daily life. For example, I'm in a habit of, rushing up for doing anything. Can I spend some time just observing it without saying that it is good or bad? Just observe it. Spend some time, some energy on watching your state and see what happens. There should be no measurement, there should be no evaluation that why am I doing it? Is it good or bad and all that? Just stay with that state for some time and observe yourself and see what happens. I think that is where we should begin. I just wanted to add this much. Thank you.
Do you want to say that it will be some sort of audit of thoughts?
I don't, audit was again evaluation. I'm not saying audit. You are only using words. That's the problem. Just observe. Don't say it is good or bad and this account is all right, this account is not all right. Can you stay with that state of just observation without any evaluation? Try to be in that state. Then the questions will not be there. Then you'll be able to see things. Problem is that we are so much involved in asking questions, understanding somebody else's answer, and taking that to be for granted, that we are never able to observe ourselves. Anything that comes to your mind, like asking questions, find out why do you ask questions? What is the motive behind this? Like that. That could be any number of things. I'm just giving an example. And I think this is true for all of us. One has to be in that state for some time and observe without expecting a miracle. Just be there. Yes, Dr. Pradeep Verma, please unmute yourself.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning, friends, and good evening, Howard. It was such a beautiful talk. It was something like a haiku for me. Minimum words, and you could say so many things using some sort of Occam's razor. So this was very, very good. And thank you very much for that. Now, for me, certain questions are there, small question. Basis of question is, I don't know. As you have also said, the basis of question is, I don't know. So there is no question of my self-image in that. It is or it is not. Both the things are there. I cannot say I'm not there, but self-image is not there. The real question is always, it starts from I don't know. So that self-image is out that way. Because this is the root of all the discussions, JK discussed with so many people, all sorts of selves, I may say, all the basis of discussion and dialogue, isn't it the self only? Till it comes to this conclusion, what you have given, when self is not. See, all the discussions we discuss as self only. This is what because it is the mind that feels order and disorder, interprets and understands. You see, this mind being universal, because of connectivity, practically for each of us is a micro whole. I don't mind saying it's a micro whole that responds differentially. This is what happens to all of us. You see, conditioning does it, and consciousness is always vulnerable to conditions around. Mind knows about disorders and falsity in the world. Silence of mind is also transient. To me, silence of mind is transient. So everything is in a flux. So silent mind is also changing this way or that way. So these are certain points which I wanted to share. Thank you very much. You have given a very, very precise and very good account of this question of whether self is there or not, self-image is there or not. It is very hard for anyone to find out whether it is coming out of self-image or self only I am. So these things are there because I know I am talking to you. I know I am questioning certain things. I know I am the self. There is no problem with the self as such this way. Thank you very much. If anything, if you want to respond, do that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Dr.
I'm not sure how you, what exactly you're saying when you say the mind is transient, because I think, and you said that the silent mind to me is simply awareness, like it's in one of the David Bohm and Krishnamurti dialogues in the End of Time, Krishnamurti suggested when the self is not, that is the ground. It's the ground that sees. It's not a Howard, an identity that sees. In the pure choiceless awareness, it's the ground that sees. It's not a me or a you. So I don't think that's transient, but I'm not sure how you're using it. But I'm saying it's the awareness that's never affected, that's never changed, that simply reveals everything. Like, so it reveals what's this flux. It reveals the nature of this flux that's moving, but it's the flux that's moving. The awareness is, from what best I can tell, is not transient. It's just observant and revealing, like, and it's intelligence as well. Like, so anyways, that's my suggestion is it's when the conditioning drops away, it's just pure awareness.
That I agree. Awareness is always there and it is impersonal. That also we know. It is always there as a nature's gift, right from the birth. All the time it is there. Only because of conditioning, we wavers from here to there. That is there. That is there. Awareness is not transient, but the way we live, all of us, you see?
Yes.
That through that, it came to me that silence of mind becomes an ideal, and it is at times you feel it silence each one of us, but that is transient. So that is not, you may say, it is not that ideal silence I am talking about.
Yeah.
Once it is achieved, then everything is seeing only something like Sakshi Bhav, witness with me all the time, just seeing and seeing, although seeing per se, seeing as such even, has to have some interest in the life, the vitality, the life that is in me. You see, that seeing itself is quite vital. It keeps me going. It cannot be, I don't say it is attributed, I don't attribute it to motive, nothing, not that thing, but there is interest, life interest is there to see things as they are. Thank you, Howard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Harshad Bhai.
Yes. What I like to say is that most of us human beings are living mostly with thinking and feeling. And this awareness which we are talking about is hidden under the dense layers of thinking and feeling. And we go round and round, even intellectual people, they are using only thinking and feeling. Logic is also that. But when there is a discontinuity in thinking, there is a gap, a silence. And maybe at that instant when there is a discontinuity in thinking, there is a gap created between two thoughts, then this awareness, which is hidden under, has ability to come out through the gap and come above the dense layer of thinking and feeling and look down at how these thoughts and feelings are working. So our difficulty is that we are living, we may use the word awareness, but it may not be awareness. It is just a thinking about awareness. When there is a awareness, it can see clearly what the thinking and feeling are doing, what is happening. And I talked about curiosity to look at our inner world. And similarly, there is another quality which we can call sensitivity, because many people, they have, say, the habit of smoking, but they are not really sensitive to see that how it is damaging to the body. It may be smoking or drinking or even getting angry, because a person who is sensitive and he feels the anger, at that time, if the question comes to this sensitive person, that is it possible to observe this anger which is arising and to be really free? So this kind of questions have not come to most human beings. Even what is boredom, what is loneliness. So this requires a kind of sensitivity and curiosity, not because we have a problem to solve, but curious, just like children are curious when they look at a butterfly or a bird, and they are not thinking of gathering knowledge about that. Similarly, when we have this sensitivity and curiosity to look inward, we can begin to see everything, how these problems are coming into existence. And when we are able to see it, then that resolves the problem. So this is a kind of ongoing, effortless awareness, which is necessary. And in the absence of awareness, thought and feelings multiply, and then it can lead to very violent reaction like anger or killing somebody or suicide, or all that happens when there is no awareness. So awareness is not the word awareness, but it is something which can look at thinking and feeling very, very clearly and without trying to change it. Okay, I finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We go to the next question, Howard, or would you like
Sure.
to say something? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, or maybe I'll say one thing, I guess.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I think that was well stated. I want to add something else. I think it, sometimes Krishnamurti would talk about that sometimes we look at things, through an individual lens instead of looking at holistically, in observing oneself, in relationship, I'm suggesting to observe the whole relationship, not because there's that tendency again for it to become a me looking at me, rather than just looking at what's happening. What is this? What are these brains doing? So look at the whole relationship, not just me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Prasad Gogada. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Namaste to everyone. So after listening to this, what came to my mind is, so death is part of order. Like otherwise, dying inside myself psychologically, that brings a kind of peace and happiness inwardly. And so as I observe myself, so the dying is happening very in a happy manner. So earlier I used to, so I'm sorry, I'm unable to put it into words exactly, but what I want to say is dying is order. So the dying, when it is happening inside ourselves psychologically through observation, through these discussions, when we're looking into ourselves, when that death is happening, it is automatically creating order without that I want to create order. So as we know, it's not really order. It's more it's more a kind of disorder when I am particularly trying to create order in the society. But if I can die for myself through intelligence, through observation, then it automatically brings about order without our awareness. So that also brings a kind of anonymous life, a like towards anonymous life. That means you are really happy doing something, or also you are also happy doing without doing anything, because you are really having fun watching yourself. You are more close to yourself. So there is nothing really you need outside um, uh, to have to fulfill yourself, or yeah, to fulfill myself. I don't need anything out from outside. But if it is there from outside, that is also fine. But in observing myself, I'm having fun. So, and through that fun, there is a death of a psychological entity which is illusory, and that itself is bringing order without my being aware of it, or without much effort from my side. So yeah, I just want to add this my insight. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I have, I guess I would like to, yes, whenever this dying occurs, there is, a peace of, or a tranquility, or, but there's something else going, I'd like to describe it this way. In observing the nature of this conditioning, and observing how essentially every one of us got conditioned. We all got conditioned. We all got, we were all told that we have a particular name, and we were told that that name is the thinker. We were told Howard is the thinker, and these are his beliefs. And see, but we're not separate from each other. And it's literally when this falseness is seen, the programming that we each got that said, you have a particular name and you're the thinker, that's all coming from a program. The thought that I'm the thinker is part of the program. And when that's seen to be false, what's seen is you are humanity. You're not just this singular human being, you're humanity. It's the human brain that's doing all of the processing and thinking and connecting. And so it's not an imaginary entity that's doing any of that. So the dropping away of the entity is a seeing that you are life itself. You are humanity. So, and looking out, you see that humanity is still in crisis. And it's our responsibility as humanity to address to what's going on in our relationships. It's the responsibility of each one of us to address the disorder in our relationships. It's not the freeing of the mind from the self-center, frees it from separating itself from everything else. we are life. We're not a separate entity, and it's life that's doing us. It's not a imaginary entity that's doing us. So there's a responsibility that's seen in the dying to the self-center. There's a seeing of the responsibility to connect. That's
Thank
all.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Howard.
Yes.
Yes, Dinesh ji.
Sir, my question is, how do we see this not knowing state? Is it only thought that I am not knowing anything, but I just want to know? Or the brain ceases because it sees that there is a limitation and it cannot bring a new thing, or it cannot live in a new way. So what are your views? What means not knowing state?
Was that first thing you said? Did you say holistically, or no? What? I'm not clear of the question, I guess.
Question is, when we say I'm not knowing.
Yep.
I don't know.
Mhm.
So what is the state of mind? Is it only because I don't know right now and I want to know as soon as possible, or I am curious to know? Or I am curious to know. This is one thing. Or the brain sees that all these questions and curiosity and all that is coming from the old mind, and it has got limitation. So seeing that limitation, it ceases to act and says I don't, and that is the do not know state.
Mhm.
What are your views on this?
Well, what I see is, like curiosity is our inherent nature. But it gets destroyed with the conditioning, with the reward and punishment and all this. It suppresses that natural innate curiosity of being a human being. There could be, the curiosity could become from an I saying, I want to know how to get free or something. That could be a self-centered curiosity. But I think you can see it in young children. We're just innately curious. That's life is loving itself. It wants to see, it wants to be in touch with it. It's, so the dying to the self-center frees that, like curiosity to just be attentive to what is, wants to see how you're doing, wants to see what's happening there. How are we living together? It's just to die to this self-centeredness frees the innate curiosity, the care to see what's happening, what's going on. It's innate to us, but it's being suppressed by the conditioning.
Okay, thank you.
Dinesh, I want to just add to what Howard said. With my own experience, I can just say that the natural instinct of the mind is, given a problem, it wants to find an answer with experience, with knowledge that we have. So thought, which is basically a product of the memory, comes forward and tries to give an answer. Sometimes we give wrong answer to impress people and so on. But if you are honest to ourselves, a stage comes where the mind itself says that, well, I really don't know what is the answer. And at that moment, the mind becomes very, very quiet. So the question of any curiosity or I have to find an answer, all that ceases.
I'd
I
like
think
to add something to that.
Yes, please.
I want to suggest that, see what I'll go into my own history or something. When I picked up my first Krishnamurti book, it was Freedom from the Known, and on this top of the second page, It said, you people are all waiting for someone to give you the answer. You're all secondhand people. And that was literally seen to be a fact about this person, human being. And when that was seen, that how everything I thought I knew was secondhand, it was clear that I didn't know much about anything. It turned everything from that point on into a question. Whenever somebody says something, it's like, is that so? Let me see. I mean, it's, you know, whether it's a statement or a question, there's no interest in being a secondhand being, because it makes no sense to go through this life confused. And if you don't see things for yourself, you're confused. So anyway, that's just my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Harshad bhai, please.
Yeah, yes. We are talking about dying, the psychological death means silence, no sense of I or me. But I think we have lived only with lot of thinking and feeling, especially after we have gone to school, learn a language, and all our activities are mostly through thinking. So this silence, when it happens, it may be very frightening for most people. It means that there is no sense of I, and that is psychological death, which is actually a freedom, which is very frightening. And that is why most people are happy to keep on thinking and trying to find answer through thinking, reading, but not looking non-verbally. And that is the real problem, that whether we can look without this thinker and seeing clearly how these thoughts are unfolding within us. And that is the difficulty, because we are living mostly in thinking and feeling. And everything comes, all our answers, questions are coming from thinking and feeling, not something coming spontaneously out of silence. So when such a thing happens, a spontaneous question comes, that why I am like this? Why do I get angry? Or why I am smoking? When such question comes spontaneously out of curiosity, silence, sensitivity, then there are no answers. It's just seeing it, it dissolves the problem. So our problem is seeing, we are not able to see clearly, non-verbally. Okay, I will finish.
Yes, Harish ji, please unmute yourself. There's lots of noise from your side. I don't know why. I think there's a train.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, my flat is very close to the train track, so sometimes there is noise. Okay. Well, there are two things which I was wondering about. If there could be some sort of exploration. That is, one thing is in the context of K, death and dying should be separated. I'm not talking about physical death. There is one kind of death about which K said in the year 1925 or 27. There is no Krishnamurti. The river has merged in the ocean, which in layman's language, which is the death of the self. But Krishnaji has emphasized, and this is one of the salient features of K's teachings, dying each moment, dying from moment to moment. But one thing is very, very important to note. He always talks about dying to something. The best example I can think of, somebody came to my house and has picked a fight with me, an argument with me, and it was very, very heated discussion, and he insulted me, and he's gone. Now, he is gone. And then naturally, when I observe my mind, then it is in turmoil. It is boiling at 100 degrees centigrade. But as I keep watching, and including all obstacles in the way of watching, he should not have insulted me, I was not in the wrong, and my neighbor is very quarrelsome and all that. No problem, let the thoughts come. You watch that also. Is it possible that if not immediately, there is no residue which has precipitated? I'm not sure. And let me draw the attention of my friends to one thing, and I hope most of you remember in the discussion on, video where Krishnaji says, on one of his evening walks in Ojai, suddenly he was walking alone, and suddenly he found himself in front of, face to face with a huge dog, as huge as tiger or lion, something as he sounded. And Krishnaji just froze. There was no thought. He just froze. He did not do a thing, just looked right straight into the eyes of that, God knows which breed of the dog. But he says one thing very interesting. When the dog went its way, God knows how it had drifted from the leash of its master. He came back to room and he found that the whole body was trembling and shivering. Well, it is a matter of, as we talk about curiosity and all that, was there any self or no? It was the natural reaction of the body and the mind, which is not the mind, not self-centered, to react that way, just like reflex action. There is no self-centeredness in any reflex action. So basically, dying to each moment in such a way, okay, I saw something. Sally or kids may say a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Because whenever I remember the beautiful valley during my 1 week at Zanan and Gestad, I remember that and I feel happy. That is a different thing. But not to have, but this does not create disorder in my life. Beautiful memories, not that I have to dwell on it again, doesn't create disorder. But anything which freshens my wounds, psychological wounds, certainly creates disorder. So the challenge is to die to that psychological wounds once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harishji. I just want to add something to what you said. I don't think the conscious mind has any control on recording that incident you mentioned, somebody insulting us and so on, or saying something suddenly which leaves a very deep impression on us. But if there is an awareness, it's very easy to come out of that hurt without creating a scar. So I think even though we get wounded, we can come out unwounded if we are aware of this. I just wanted to add this one. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Arun Partha, please unmute yourself. Before I invite Arun, Howard, would you like to say something to what Harish mentioned?
Well, I would just kind of like to repeat what like Harshad was saying about this, to find out if we're really observing choicelessly. I mean, I think it seems that most people feel they're observing, but they're actually interpreting. They're evaluating what's being said according to their beliefs and opinions, to see whether they agree with it or disagree with it, to see whether I think it's the truth. And if that's happening, it's staying in the loop of conditioning. It has to, it can't be any evaluating or interpreting. in choiceless awareness. It's just being aware of the thoughts that are coming up, observing what the thought's saying, what's the content, and as also observing whether it's actually the thought that's creating the reaction in the body, not what the stimulus was, but it's actually the interpreting that's creating the reaction of anger or fear or something. And as far as like coming into contact with a physical danger, I would suggest that it's natural to have a fright. You'll be frightened momentarily, but fear is always about the imagination of what might happen to me. Fright is natural, but the fear is always a psychological movement of what might happen to me. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Parsati.
Good morning, everyone. So actually, you mentioned that when the self is not, there is order. But in the current world scenario, if you look at it, there's a lot of inequality, racism, cruelty, and all that which is going on. There's a lot of disorder outside, no? So do you think in any part of any moment in this in time, do you think that would change? That means so many selves have to, should not be there. So do you think something like that could happen? That's my question, because we are shaken up daily, by hearing a lot of things which is happening outside. So how do we react to that? And do you think a change like that could ever happen? Thank you.
Well, that's actually what I'm exploring in my life. This question that, or this suggestion that Krishnamurti made, if six people could free themselves from this conditioning and they could work together, like it could be like a laser effect or something. It could affect the whole of consciousness. So I'm curious to see if that can happen. But aside from that, it seems like it's up to us having dialogues like this, to where we observe ourselves and learn together. It's just, that's the closest that I've found so far, is by inquiring together, observing together, is how we can learn together and to free the mind from this constraint of this conditioning. But I am quite interested in exploring this possibility of a small group of people dying to the known, and to see perhaps that can change consciousness. I'm very interested in that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Dinesh ji.
Sir, this dying issue, my views are these proportional reactions will always be there, whether a dog comes in front of you or a snake comes in front of you, or suppose there is a bombing in Ukraine. So Ukraine people maybe get wild and angry and all that. That proportional reaction will always be there. And as you said, I also think that unless we know that this past, our all past is a imagery, or it is unimportant, it is we have to use it as a tool only, or as an instrument only, and there is no significance in it other than that, because it's a past. So I think this should be the dying. What you have to say on this?
What was the last comment? The question? What?
This should we should consider dying, means unless.
Yeah. Well, that's dying to the self, but I would just add that, like, it seems like people often have a very limited notion of what the self is. Like they can say, oh yeah, there's no I, there's no me, but there's a whole movement of thought. There's a whole collection of every thought that I think is mine. It's all of those. And if you don't see the falseness of the whole of that, it's dying to that whole structure. Like all of every belief. That's why Krishnamurti would ask questions like, why do you have beliefs? Can you live without beliefs? that's same thing as saying, can you live without a self? All of the assumptions, all the expectations, all the beliefs and opinions, they're just expectations, they're assumptions. And to see that that's all they are, they're not anything of significance. They're just creating conflict in relationship.
Thank you. Yes, Harshad ji.
May I make a comment?
Yes, yes.
These dialogues which we are having, it is for about maybe 1-2 hours a week. But what happens in our life when we don't have this kind of verbal dialogue? Are we really deeply interested in the nature of relationship which we have with nature, with human beings? What is happening within us? Are we really curious? So that is much more important than having this kind of verbal dialogues where everybody will, of course, express what they feel. But what happens when we don't have this kind of dialogue? That is very important. And the other thing what I like to say, that I have come across wild animals many times, but I have just looked. There was no fear, just looking like a panther, and I looked for some few seconds, and then the panther went away. There was nothing, no thinking. So this is really amazing, because we can look at a tree, we can look at everything without this thinking, and in that real beauty is there. There's no fear, no previous knowledge coming into. So this is something can happen to human beings if they are very curious, not when they have problems, but when they have no problems, are they really looking what is happening, And and this is endless kind of learning. And in that, there is not that you don't feel tired. But if you are with a motive, you want to understand yourself, you will get tired. And then when you get tired, then you lose awareness. And in that loss of awareness, you do many things which is undesirable. So the real question is this ongoing, effortless awareness. And that is what Krishnaji was talking about. And that really interests me very much. That what we do when we don't have dialogues like this, are we really looking, not at something particular to be free, but just to look. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Harshad. Prasad sir, please go ahead.
Sir, I am sorry I missed the talk of Mr. Ward. And that is because of the confusion of, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 9:30, all that. Because we are used to 11 o'clock and, somehow it took time to get adjusted to this. So I missed a wonderful talk, but I will make up by listening to the recorded speech of Mr. Ward. And another small thing, I hope Mr. Dubey will not get bored with my comment. That is, Mr. Ward is another foreigner whose accent I could follow without difficulty. Because I have a lot of problem with the accent of foreigners. But sir, this topic, order and silence, silent mind, I really don't find what is the difficulty, because we all live in the disorder that is quite apparent when we are angry or when we are envious or when we are, comparing ourselves with somebody else. These are all signs of disorder in us. I mean, once that fact is understood, then obviously we live in disorder. And the only way to get out of that disorder is there is no effort. Any effort on our part also creates disorder. It adds to that disorder. So the only thing we can do is to observe it, or as Krishnaji says, choicelessly to be aware of it. Because any choice again is not freedom. Choice, he says, even in that small core message, choice is not freedom, reaction is not freedom. We can see our disorder in small things, like when I am reserving my slot by raising the hand here, I think that itself is a part of our disorder. It is like a railway compartment where I put my hanky down on the seat so that nobody else comes and sits there. You know, it's something like that. Sir, once, apart from scholarship and all that, what is the difficulty in observing our disorder? I don't see any difficulty in that. He has also said, observe choicelessly, and also see that you are the disorder. Not that you are observing disorder, but when there is disorder in you, you are that disorder. So observe without the observer. Observe without choice, observe without disorder. These are all, at least theoretically, these are all quite clear. There is no confusion about it. And unless the disorder subsides, there is no silence. Silence comes only when the disorder subsides. So silence is something which we occasionally experience, but normally we may not experience that. But there is nothing we can do about that. If I cannot experience, I mean, there is no experiencer in silence also. That is also there. So we complicate matters by creating too much of theory about it. So these sessions also, it should not simply be a release, for our inner vacancy. Because somewhere he says, what are you without your property and all that? What are you without your sessions? So you are only a shell, he says. So we should not be, these sessions and this type of discussion and all that should not be simply a release for our emptiness. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Prasad.
Yeah, I'd like to say that
Yes.
there's a good possibility that if we feel we're watching and we're saying, there's disorder, that we're not really observing choicelessly. That's interpreting, according to what we think we know. So I suggested earlier, I think the important thing in looking together is to forget everything you think you know. And otherwise, it's going to be just more interpreting. I did want to, you were talking about, see, sometimes people will say, I can't observe anger when I'm just so terribly angry. And so I point out, well, then observe anger when it's not so overwhelming, because all anger has the same structure. All fear has the same structure. If you're able to see the structure of fear at a low level, you see the nature of it at every level. It has the same structure, so that you don't have to see every single form of fear or anger. You can see the nature of it in a single fear. So it's anyways, you know, like it's to just, the thing I wanted to mention was, so when we read Krishnamurti or listen to him, he says, no effort, okay? But he also says, try it out, experiment. Look at, you know, like you're in a relationship, just watch it, you know, try, observe, how does it work if I suspend everything I know? Can I listen without interference? Just experiment, you know, just see. You're trying it out, you're experimenting. You're not coming from certainty or anything. You're just saying, let's see how this works. Or what would it mean to listen without any beliefs or opinions? Just experiment. See, I'm not making an effort to get anywhere. I just want to see what's going on. How does it work? So I don't think we should be too afraid of trying things out, thinking that we're making an effort. You can just experiment and see how does this work? Anyways, that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a raised hand from iPhone 2, sir. Please put your video on and tell us your name.
I don't know, sir. I'm using the phone today, so I don't know what my name appears there. This is Shankar Rao.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you allow me without video, I'll be glad.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. See, I think disorder means not just anger or jealous or fear or something. Not seeing things as they are. I mean, actuality. I mean, if somebody is walking and if I see that a man is walking, then that is also a disorder. You're giving a meaning to that physical movement. If somebody is saying something, hey, come here. If I listen to that and understand that he is asking me to come there, that is a disorder. You are giving a meaning to that sound. So everything, even if you watch a tree, and the moment you understand that you are watching a tree, there is a disorder, because you are seeing through knowledge, you are hearing through knowledge. Everything, if you perceive through knowledge, that is a disorder straight away. So this is possible. You can see without knowledge only when you understand the total illusion, total false, the grand illusion, what we call the world is an illusion because it is projected from the mind. Once you understand, unless you understand that, you cannot perceive things as they are, because otherwise you are perceiving just for the sake of perceiving, or just because Krishnamurti or some XYZ has told you to perceive without an observer, without the knowledge. No, that's not the case. You have to understand that all this, the fact is there's only matter outside. There's only matter all around. You are looking at that matter as a tree, that matter as a wife, that matter as a gold, and those words as respect, as insult. Those meanings are given by this mind. Humans have created these words, meanings, and all that. So unless you understand the total illusion in the mind has created, the mind-made world. It's all illusion. Unless you understand that, you cannot perceive as it is without the observer. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the last question now. Dinesh Waghmare, please unmute yourself.
Sir, first of all, you have not commented on that proportional reaction. Means anytime we see any snack or any bad way of physical this environment or this thing, and there will be a reaction. So that will, I think that proportional reaction will always be there. Another thing, what just now the gentleman said, first we have to define what do you mean by order. Then only I think we can address this. What is disorder? Why we are discussing this on disorder? What are your views on this? Because he said that even everything moving through knowledge is a disorder.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your question for me, I would you proportional, like or limited actions or whatever you want to call it or something. I'm going to suggest something contrary to what Shankar just said. I do see that there's a problem with language of confusing it for something that it isn't. It's just a language tool. And when we confuse it for truth, that's a problem. But there's something actually going on. There's something manifesting as human forms, as forms of trees, of animals. There's something actually happening. And if something happens in our vicinity, we respond to it. We are aware of it, you respond. Now, you could call that a limited action in the whole, but it's, each human being is just a limited part of this whole. And I don't see any problem with, in fact, I think it's quite functional for us to learn to listen to each other. Can you come over and help me? Can you do this? We can work together. I don't see any problem with, like small acts, large acts, just being present, but not, like what's happening indicates what sort of response is there. If we're attentive to what is, it might be something very simple, just, can you help me move this box or something? I mean, but the problem is not that that we see that we feel there's human beings, or we feel there's animals, or we feel there's trees, because that's actually the way we're experiencing life. I spent a number of years in non-duality circles, but they get caught up in the mind of nothing matters. It's all, sure, it's all energy. It's all energy. It's all the same energy. We're all part of that. But what is our actual experience? Our actual experience is we're in relationship with everything. And we're in relationship to humanity. And if someone says, can you help me out? You see if that's possible. I mean, I don't think life is an illusion. That's actually why I left non-duality and came back to Krishnamurti, because one of the stories in The Beauty of the Mountain was some ladies were talking about how much paper we're wasting. And then after a while, Krishnamurti spoke up and said, my God, man is killing man. And so that's what concerns me. How are we living together? How are we caring for each other? Or are we pretending that we're separate from each other?
Thank you. I think this is a good way to close this session, Howard. It was beautiful. And your small talk, but very meaningful, had created so many ripples and so many questions. Thanks a lot for being with us. And maybe we'll invite you once again sometimes in the future when you are free. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
I would like to, can I make a statement or something?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so thank you all so much for, and I want to say, please let go of everything I said and find out for yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.